Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here, and it's really great to see real live people again. My name is Jane Stroucken. I am a senior program manager and agile coach at Infotix. And you can roll the slides if you don't mind. You can move on here. Here we go. Infotix is obviously, I think most of you know some of us from Infotix, and there are quite a few people we haven't met, and we are delighted to meet all of you. But we are a team of financial technology experts who focus particularly in this realm of the work that we do. My role is to support the Infotix team largely in their delivery of work streams and projects, and to provide wider support in the community where I can, and I thoroughly enjoy doing that. The foundation itself is a very strong proponent of the agile methodology, and on a very simple level, we witness that in the fact that we have PIs, program increments, in the fact that we have these community meetings, and we have work streams, and we've just currently observed two very particular examples of how agile works, and I will be bringing up those examples during the course of the chat, and I'm delighted to be chatting with you this morning. Next slide, please. So why this session? Mostly because it's really important to be a bit reflective sometimes and just make sure that we are actually on track, that we're actually applying the things that we imagine in our minds that we're actually applying, that we're actually doing it. And it's the retrospective principle that Agile is based on. Do we remember some of the fundamentals of using Agile, of the philosophy? So it's time to think about those and make sure we interpret those and we apply them. And just to remind you that Agile is a culture, and a culture only works when everybody in the community uses the culture, expresses the culture, and is a believer in the culture. So for me, that's really important. We need to all buy into the way that we work. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. So what are the advantages of Agile? I'm not going to go into this sort of, I'm not going to go into the sort of point-by-point discussions around Agile is this and Agile is not that, but customer satisfaction is key. Adding value, bringing value, delivering value. People in action and interactions are an emphasis for the Agile process. You cannot work in isolation. Customers, developers, testers constantly interact with each other. Working software is delivered. That is fundamental. Release process, weekly cycles, if you're a really mature team, monthly cycles. The foundation is trying to get into a rhythm of constantly releasing on a PI cycle. That's also okay. We want to try and push them to do it a little more regularly than that. Face-to-face conversation is the best form of communication. And I think we all realize that when we get together at these meetings, that we can actually sit across the dinner table or in the room like this and chat to someone instead of through a Zoom screen. But we can't have that all the time. So close and daily cooperation between entrepreneurs and developers. That seems like a very theoretical approach, but what we've seen here now in the last day is the people who want to use our modular loop system, who want to install it and find the value in it, giving us an inkling of a view of what for them is important and what for them is of value. That makes a huge difference to the developers who are sitting in the audience and hear that and start to understand how that requirement impacts directly on the actual code that they are delivering. And the ability to make that connection is one of the very powerful things of Agile. Next slide, please. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. That is one of the outcomes of the retrospective, pivot quickly, look at what you've done, learn from the mistakes and move on, fail fast process. Regular adaptation to new circumstances, even late changes to requirements are welcome. That seems like a dream, but if you're delivering in the right increments, in small, fast, easily delivered increments, your ability to pivot is really, really good. And that enables people to meet requirements as the customer and the client start to mature in their understanding of what it is they're looking for. You can adapt. If you've got a long, heavy roadmap of project that you can't deviate from, it becomes impossible to do that. Risk reduction and high quality is an important facet and advantage. Efficiency in delivering and flexibility to propose alternatives. So 7 and 10 are closely aligned. Next slide, please. Some of the disadvantages, because no system is perfect. The project can get easily sidetracked if the customer is unsure of the result they want. So that's not on a technical level, that's on a requirements level. And if they don't start out with a clear view, and that is the product manager, the Paul Macon role of making sure they extract real understanding from the client and help them to think through requirements to deliver for the engineer to deliver. So that's really, really key. Agile sometimes fails because of unrealistic expectations. And anybody who's worked in an Agile team knows that particularly engineers have a fantastic view of their ability to deliver. And they will tell you they can deliver a mountain in a day. And mostly they can't. So one has to be really careful about that. We have to keep pulling them back to a reality place of delivering value fast, not delivering fast. There's a difference. Agile, contrary to people's belief, requires a lot of control and a lot of interactive participation. It requires mature, self-organizing teams, teams that can rally themselves, that can support each other, that can collaborate to move something to a place of understanding and unblock something. Because we all get blocked in our attempts to deliver, and there is always someone on the team that understands how to unblock that. That's important. Remote teams are very challenging, and I think this community experiences that on a very high level. The risk with remote teams is that they isolate themselves. They become a little island in a sea of activity. And the part of the process of Agile is to try to keep people pulled in and keep them working and collaborating together. And technical debt can mount because the focus is on value and the focus is on new. So that little problem, we'll just put it on the back burner and we'll come back to it because it kind of works anyway. That's a big risk. Next slide, please. I wanted to tell you a story which is a personal experience. It's a real life story about a banking app that was delivered in 2012. We'll call the bank Bank B. And they launched their first banking app to great aplomb. It was a whole new concept that they had used to deliver it. It was called Agile. And they allocated a team to specifically try this new methodology out. and they were exempt from the usual release processes and governance processes, and they were allowed to work in an agile way. At the time of the launch, there was a lot of murks and jeers and odd comments in the general community, because it was a very basic, very simple app that kind of had the name of the bank and the logo, and you could see your accounts. That's kind of all that happened. And it was very incomplete. So 3 years later, that bank's app was the most innovative, most interactive, and customer-friendly app in that particular country of this bank's world. And the second bank that had launched their app the year before was stuck with the same app. They had not made any progress. They had not grown that app at all, because they were following a very stifling, heavy process. And their ambition was to get perfection before they released the next version. Next slide, please. So what happened in the interim? Bank B was quietly and unceremoniously bringing out updates online to the app, added a new feature here, improved something there, fixed a bug there, and they just kept that repetitive cycling going. And they accommodated changes along the way with ease. Before they realized what had happened, the entire IT team at the bank was following and working in the way of an agile project. The entire team morphed because they needed that support. They needed the rest of the IT team to work in the same way. And they had succeeded. They had a roadmap, like you saw now with Paul. It was a fabulous example of a roadmap. That roadmap was very detailed. They had a PI planning session. They had a detailed roadmap for the immediate PI. The next 2 PIs were understood. They kind of knew where they were going. They knew what they wanted to do. It wasn't quite as detailed, but it was there. And the further out it went, it was just a single block that said, we want to have this. And as they moved through that time frame, the next PI became more detailed and more, and so on and so forth. And then they had this incredible app that had outstripped all the competition. Next slide, please. And in the interim, the other bank, PB, was working extremely hard to perfect the next banking version of their app, next feature. And they had it on a roadmap, and it was complex and required many moving parts, and individual pieces were being developed within the bank's programs, and governance structures were in the way, but milestones were difficult to meet. There were integration issues between the different features, and time went by and budgets increased and milestone dates slipped, but they continued to aim for perfection. Before they realized it, the first bank, which was initially the third bank actually, had a banking app that outstripped theirs. And it's really important to just, this is a real life example, it's not a story. It's important to understand that the benefit that was achieved was a collaborative process by a self-governing team that worked on delivering small, valuable increments every sprint. That was the point they got to. They started out at a PI, they then moved into monthly releases, and by the time they finished, they were delivering value every sprint, and the sprint is 2 weeks long. It was incredible, and it worked. Next slide, please. So there's a really nice cheesy picture. It was the only one I could find. But the agile philosophy of collaboration, delivery, reflection, and improvement is a well-known and well-understood one. And how is that compatible with open source values? Well, open source is about collaboration and delivering the result of that collaboration. It's also about reflecting. That's what we're doing here. We go through a reflection process, and it's about improvement. Okay, so it helps us adapt to change. It helps us self-improve and move through a better place. So agile and open source can be very compatible and very strong in its outlook. Next slide, please. What about building a community? Because in a community sense, that is really where the value is created. That's what allows value to be delivered. So in Agile, we talk a lot about creating value. And the main idea behind that is simplifying processes and focusing on delivery of value, okay? And a possible downside of this is what I said earlier, which is that we're so focused on delivering value that we forget about the technical debt, and we need to be very careful of that. And of course, building automation into the system as well. That's also something that can get left behind as not critical. So next slide, please. How does that relate to open source? Well, for any team working in an open source community, it's crucial to understand that building and caring for that community creates value. In open source, the community is the heartbeat of the project. It does not exist if the community is not there and if the community is not collaborating. It provides crucial feedback, which we get here, but it shouldn't be only here, all right? We provide support, documentation, and the community contributes in a myriad of ways that is not just technical, not just code. Next slide, please. So it's important to build time and space for the community. Why? Because without a collaborative community working in an agile way, becomes no work at all. Why? Because people go off into their own pockets. And then when they get back together again and they start talking to each other, they realize they've missed something, or there was something additional they could have added, all right? Transparency, visibility, and consistency are the key features of a successful agile working. And how do you do that in reality? You invite parties, people in the community, to participate in the process of describing epics, describing features and user stories. Get everybody to collaborate on those very basic things. Invite people to review your user stories if they haven't been part of that, because you have users in the community. There are people sitting here in the front row who are users of the things that we are going to deliver. Those are the people who should be reviewing your user stories. Is this story actually going to deliver a feature that you would like and you need? Dedicate time to review contributions, answer questions, and provide support. And that means being part of a work stream, being part of the process of delivery, all right? As a work stream lead or a person involved in a work stream, invite people to join the sessions. Those invitations are real. They actually mean it when they say, please come and see what's happening in vNext for 2 weeks, or the performance stream or something. Join those calls, okay? Because that's where you observe. That's where you contribute. That's how you earn the right to have a view. Because if you don't join, you don't really. So my appeal is let's ensure that we contribute to part of the, and be part of the success story that is Moduloop, and use the agile process to keep what is a lot of very hard work going and making it successful. I think that's the end of it. Thank you. Are there any questions? Hello?
Thank you, Jane. This is really important to get us back to principles on Agile. One thing that I'm noting is in Paul's readout on the work streams, the category of work streams that we have are all quite long-lived. And it's a challenge because that's really not the Agile practice, which would be to deliver business value more frequently than that. And so one area where we could use your expertise and guidance, I think, would be in factoring some of what we're calling a work stream into things that we might more particularly call epics and stories and so forth. I mean, it's hard for somebody to come at this and look at this long-running 32-week thing and say, how can I join and be useful? If instead you had a series of epics, which were full PI in length, but not longer, and you had a few things which were very sizable stories that take multiple sprints, people can look at the size of work that they could contribute to that would be quite reasonable for them to engage in. But it's just so hard for people to look at a big work stream that's been going on for a while and say, how can I be helpful? Anyway, just that short comment. I think if there's a way for us to get back to that sizing principle, even though we've got big gains and big goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So I think one of the questions we have to ask ourselves around that is how do we get back to the process of planning like we used to do at the end of these community meetings, and maybe not at the community meeting, maybe post the community meeting, that enables us to break down those very big views into a PI view. And in a normal working environment, that work would be done pre the PI planning. So you would go into the planning saying, we've got this list of epics, we've got a backlog, we've got a funnel of wishes, but these are the epics we're going to be working on, or this one epic is what we're going to be working on. These are the features associated, and we would like the team to break those down into stories. So that way of working is usually done pre the gathering, and during the gathering, the work is broken down. This is slightly different because the community meeting is much wider, but yes, I do agree with you, Miller. We need to try and find a way that makes it easier for potential contributors to look at a specific piece of work and say, I've got this resource capacity, I can add value there. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.